Yes, we are live with
There we go.
Alon Ben-Shoshan, mesdames et messieurs. So he's a CBO at Instrumental. He's helping electronics brands build better hardware in Palo Alto, and also spends time in Lake Tahoe. We were talking about that. And we were talking about, guess who? Mr. Elon, and innovation and the pros and cons, and the fact that you need to sort of be crooked to make it crooked in the head, that is, to make it to that level of success. I think, yeah, it's very hard to make it to the top. And yeah, the high level excellence that these entrepreneurs show, you sort of need to have your quirks, right, Elon? So what's your take on Elon, Mr.
I
Tesla?
mean, so first of all, I think a lot of folks are really hating on the person. And I
Yeah.
think that what we need to recognize is he's built companies and there's a lot of great people that work at these companies, right? So we were talking about how I live up in Tahoe and I work in Palo Alto and I come down for a few days a week. I don't go back and forth every day. It's a 4-hour drive. And I'm able to, it's the only car that I could buy where I can go into full self-driving and 4 hours later show up at my destination, whether there's traffic or
Rested.
snow or feeling great and safer. I mean, look, if you ask my wife, she'll tell you I'm not the best driver. I get distracted, right? I'm always thinking about things. And so the ability to have that safety is also really important. And I think it also extends to SpaceX. I mean, here in the United States, Musk has saved our ass when it comes to the space race. Otherwise, we'd still be relying on, and I've got no problem with Russia, but the US and Russia aren't exactly allies these days, right? And so if our only way to get to space is Russia or Musk, I mean, it's crazy. I know a lot of people have been talking about how the Boeing capsule to the International Space Station failed and they had to send Tesla. I think it's really sad that in this country it's become so political that we had to strand astronauts in space, right? Or, Tesla's from an American perspective, these cars are made right here in Fremont, right here in the Bay Area, right? And so if we talk about bringing manufacturing back to the United States, there's very few people that have been successful in doing that. And that's also what we're focused on in Instrumental. And so we look up to folks that understand how to build, atoms instead of bits, right? It's really hard to produce these systems that rely on the physical world and physical AI versus, just yet another app. And, these apps really do help us in our day-to-day life, but we also need physical things to help our world change. And, the next thing is too, I think a lot of people are very negative on the Tesla stock. What they don't realize is humanoid robots are coming very close to being real. I think it's very similar to when we talked about self-driving 5 years ago, right? Who would have thought? Now, I don't know how many of your audience have been to San Francisco or Phoenix or LA, where Waymos are driving around. You open up the app, a car pulls up, there is no driver in the front seat, and you can just get in. And I don't think that we believed that that was going to be possible 5 years ago, right? So
Oh yeah.
the next revolution that we're all talking about here is humanoid robots, and whether, Charles, you're going to have one at home and it's going to
I
fold your
have
laundry and
five
do your
or
dishes,
10
5
or
or 10,
20.
right? But if it's going to cost you $20,000 or $30,000 to have a robot that's your assistant, I mean, it sounds super creepy. If you've got small kids, taking
It's
care of
not
those
like,
kids.
not to me, like to most people, yes, but to me, it sounds second nature.
So you believe that every middle or upper middle class family that could afford a $25,000 car would also go and save up for a $25,000 robot.
Yeah, Gen Zs, like newer gens, I do think that are technology savvy. They grew up with technology around them. It's more like the model, right, and the sort of creepiness of it, like you mentioned. I do think that older gens wouldn't, but to me, I mean, I have maids here and people that clean the house. So, like, I do think that I would have robots to complement them, and I don't know, to play with my dogs while I'm away, for example. So stuff like that, right? To
What's really
build
interesting
houses,
too.
to build shit for me, right? Like to tinker
So I'll
about
tell you what
stuff.
the so there's a big crisis here in the United States right now. We just posted on this on LinkedIn today. So we talk about AI. Everyone's talking about AI. And I think one of the things that people don't understand is that there are a lot of challenges in building out infrastructure. We talk about energy, right? And how China is got 3x the energy build out as the United States. And I don't know how much, I mean, by the way, Charles, what is the talk about AI and sovereign AI clouds? And what do you see in terms of, I'm sure there's a lot of entrepreneurs working on AI, but what is the government saying about AI in Mexico? I'm curious.
Silence, radio silence. It's Mexico, like as here in Oaxaca, it's 2025 now. It feels like 2005, which is one of the reason why I'm here. It's like to chill, right? Because I'm always wired to this computer, and when I go out in my backyard, it's like pure nature connection and no noise and silence, sort of. Canada is probably 5 years behind, and US is the leader. China's great. I think we should be friends with China. I do. I don't think they shared some of our NATO-like values, but I've been to
Very
China.
entrepreneurial.
Yeah, very entrepreneurial, great people as well, very kind people. They're not their government, which is a big problem, right? So they could expect a revolution, and yeah, they deployed DeepSeek, and you ask DeepSeek questions about communism and all of these things. I mean, they're not like hard communists, right? And I think America's been great also at like projecting shit on other countries, like Mexico, the war on drugs and all of that, and China is the big bad enemy, and so is Russia. I think most humans are the same. But
100%.
yeah, what kind of event will bring humanity together, right? Like it took Trump to unify Canada. You know, like my native Quebec, which is very separatist.
Yeah.
It took the 51st state to unite Canadians. What cataclysmic event will bring the world together? Will it be an AGI or something? But yeah, I think America is on to great tracks. I'm about to listen to the Super Factory of Stargate video today. I had it on my playlist. I think
Nice.
Sam Altman deployed that yesterday or 4 hours ago, something like that. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens.
First of all, what is interesting, and you talk about how AI is not necessarily a priority for the Mexican government, is I don't know if a lot of people know this, but most of our AI compute is getting built out in Mexico today.
I didn't know that. Where? Guadalajara?
Yeah. Guadalajara is one of the biggest ones, but there's facilities across Mexico, right? In places like Monterrey and Aguascalientes and so on and so forth. And one of the big challenges that we have is, and this is what I was starting to allude to, is sure, we need energy to power AI infrastructure, and it's really about tokens per kilowatt. But the other thing that we need to do is we need to be able to build these servers. And I'm coming back to this robotics theme, which is there are not enough people in the United States, in Mexico, and guess what? Even in China, to be able to build out the electronics that we need. And you could say, well, I heard from Jensen that these are the factories of the future and so on and so forth. So I actually started my career in the semiconductor industry where the factories do look like the factories of the future. If you go and look at any images of a TSMC factory, it's going to look super modern to you, right? If I go and take a look at what's happening in a Foxconn facility, and look, I mentioned Foxconn because I admire Foxconn. They're the most advanced manufacturer, not just of iPhones, but they're obviously, this is public information. They're a key partner for NVIDIA to build out these servers. Building out the servers that we need in order to power AI actually takes a lot of human hands. And that's because automation today is not able to go and connect all of these cables. If you think about the latest product that NVIDIA put out, the GB200 NVLink 72, that's 72 GPUs, okay, Blackwell GPUs, that are connected as one unit. So there's a lot of cables and a lot of networking, and they're water cooled, and there's a lot of power, and they're almost impossible to automate. But when we get humanoid robots, yeah, you can take a look at that. So the GPU is the silicon. And if you look at, if you put in GB200 and Jensen, you'll see him on stage. There you go. And he'll be showing, exactly how these things are built. Those are the boards, but those boards have to go into a full rack. And so today, the big revolution that NVIDIA drove is just like you had a desktop computer, right, that had all this compute. They've now created a full rack scale single compute unit with this GB200. And you can actually see it kind of on the right, this rack that Jensen's standing in front of. So those have 18 compute trays with 4 GPUs each. And then they've got 9 switches, and those switches allow those compute trays to act as one computer, right? And so, what Jensen will tell you is, this is a $3 million computer, like a single computer that costs $3 million, right? We used to talk about supercomputers. These are now the state of the art, what is common in data centers as they're coming out. Well, when we talk about what's really interesting is we actually need AI to power the robots to be able to manufacture the servers that the AI is running on, right? Because human beings across the world do not want to work in factories. And there's not enough human beings that are trained up enough. Yeah, so Tesla's got their robot, and there's a lot of other companies. If you look at Figure.ai, they had some big announcements. And what's really interesting, because of the AI, Figure.ai or Figure Robots, it's a bunch of folks out of Apple that built this thing. I think they're showing them. Yeah. And so, one of the things that they announced a few months ago is that the advancement of these humanoid robots is actually happening ahead of schedule, faster than anticipated. Since when has that happened in humanity where technology is actually advancing so fast? And that's because AI is advancing so fast. Well, and the other thing is, you could say, why does the humanoid form factor make sense for a robot? We should build purpose-built robots. Well, guess what? We built the world around us for humans. I mean, the chair that I'm sitting in is built for humans, but your washing machine, your sink, your dishwasher at home, that's built for humans. Our factories are built for humans to work in. The AI servers that we built are built for humans with 2 hands and 5 fingers on each hand to assemble. And so it really all feels like things are coming together. I know there's like a lot of turmoil in the world, but I'm a super techno optimist in that all these technologies that are coming up are going to completely change our lives in the most positive way that there is.
And you're at the center of it, right? Like my predictions with robotics was like 10 years or so till we get like these humanoids inside our homes. My AGI predictions, if we haven't got it already, I mean, to some definitions, I think the only piece left is making it agentic and autonomous and giving it goals, arguably, but I think would be like 2 to 3 years. Do these predictions are these accurate, or would you say it earlier or later?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of the challenges. Us humans have a tough time comprehending exponential growth, and so there's futurists like, there's futurists like Ray Kurzweil that talks about this a lot, right? And writes books about this, and we just kind of have to understand that 3 years, if you're going exponential year after year, is actually 10x. It's not 3x. And that's kind of a little bit hard to understand, right? And do you remember, Charles, when, I don't know how old you are, but when the internet came out 31. And you sat in front of a web browser, what's that?
31. Yeah. So I was there when it happened.
Yeah.
I'm a Diablo 1 guy.
There you go. I heard Musk is like the number 1 Diablo player. Is that true?
Shouldn't waste his time on that. What I do, my hack is that I put Diablo 3 on that screen and my brain think it's playing, but it's actually working.
There you go. So in any case, when you sat down in front of the web browser, or the first time you picked up a smartphone, right? You remember when these things came out, right? And it was like, am I going to be able to browse on this thing? Am I going to do my shopping? I mean, how much of your shopping do you do on your mobile phone? And how much food do you order?
9%. But
and when these things came out,
like a futuristic person. I guess most people is like 80% nowadays.
Yeah, but when we had those Nokias that you could play Snake on, right? We never thought that we would manage our lives on something that fit in our pocket, right? And I remember when I was a kid, I had a calculator watch. Remember those calculator watches?
Yeah.
And I would kind of dream that I could do more things with this calculator watch. And then Apple Watch comes out and just magic. And then we dream, like we talked about self-driving cars. And then you can take a ride in a self-driving car right now. I can call one to my office here and take it up to the city and I don't have to deal with some Uber driver, right? And so now we're going to be dreaming about, I think it's a little
drivers. They'll have to deal with, I agree, like their conversation skills sometimes and their hygiene, but that itself was a gigantic revolution, Uber. Like that was fucking game changer. That and when I could order food at my house, I think that was great. But to your point, I think it's moving super fast. What else has been like game changing in your SF world, your Palo Alto world as of late that you've experienced firsthand?
Yeah. So I see one of the interesting things is how this whole valley is built on software, right? And as Andreessen had said many years ago, he had said software is eating the world. Okay. And so now the question is, there's a lot of people employed by this industry, and software developers up here at the big companies. I mean, they're making $500,000 a year, which I think people don't really realize. And of course, these top AI software developers are making millions a year, right? Entry-level developers are making quite a bit of money. And what happens when the AI software agent becomes like the modern day compiler, right? So people that wanted to write software had to go to school for 3 or 4 years, right? Like your friends and my friends. I'm not a software engineer, I'm a mechanical engineer. We had to learn this language, and then we had to develop the skills over many years to be able to develop all these applications like this one that we're talking on right now, right? And what happens in the world where that is
They
now
become
abstracted?
entrepreneurs. They become entrepreneurs, and they have shitloads of money, and they become my GTM clients
There you go, right?
because they
But
don't
then
know
what
how
does
to
that?
do go to market, right? They will know how to manage AI agents, but some parts will take slower to adapt. By the way, even as AI SDRs, you've probably seen all these companies nowadays, but I think most will become entrepreneurs. I think I'm not so worried about them. They're pretty smart. And arguably, it's pretty smart to get a job when you're getting paid 1.5 mil a year, right? It's quite tough to make that as an entrepreneur. Um, but I think they'll become entrepreneurs and they'll develop new skills, right? Like agent orchestration, connecting
Yeah,
everything together, and just like chilling at an eagle's eye view and just seeing what's happening.
yeah, yeah. So it's going to be about your creativity, right? You're not going to be limited by your ability to write code. And then the question is, what's going to be the new interface? Because today it's still pretty difficult. While we have things like Cursor that can help people write code, the interface is still very much for engineers, isn't it? And so, how does someone that's not a software engineer uh, build these new applications, right? Anyone, our kid, I've got 4 kids, right? So my kids should be able to create a game. But now, how do you go and manipulate that? And so I think that's a big revolution that's coming in the software world. And we're going to see more and more. I actually have a good friend that was just talking about this with yesterday, who effectively said, look, the hard part is now not writing code, but it's how do you define the spec and the prompts to get the outcomes that you desire, right? And so now we've
Chicken
got
and
this whole
egg.
new industry. That's right. So
And
that's
how
a
do you
lot of
fix
what
chicken and
folks.
egg? It's just like over deploying. I think also like skills of the future is being very intense and having gigantic balls, right? And instead of one experiment per month, you do 100 experiments per day, right? To find product market fit, instantly double down on that. It's so exciting. It's so crazy. But like folks that don't have your or my brain, I'm pretty scared for them. And these people are probably going to come back at society, right? Like protesting and all of that. What do you think about
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely meet these people. It's really interesting. I've learned to smile and nod and not be confrontational. I'm Israeli, just like you're, from Quebec. And this hot, I mean, if you've met Israelis, right, we kind of open our mouth and it always sounds like we're arguing. But I think the biggest thing is, how do we bring this into the physical world to make our lives better, right? And I think sure people are talking about using it in medicine, using it in technology, and so on and so forth. But if I'm going back to where I was talking about building these servers, if you walk into, I'm just using Foxconn because people have heard that name, it's a bunch of people standing next to each other that physically have to build this thing, and you still have engineers that have to go and use CAD and manually do it. And so I think there's going to be a very long process of going from today we get our answers with AI, maybe tomorrow we get software developed with AI, but then how are we going to design a car or a spaceship or an airplane or the next protein bar for our ultra marathon training with AI, right? And so this is going to persist.
Yeah, I think UBI is going to kick in pretty quick as well, but hyper capitalists are not going to want to share too much. So it's going to be interesting. Do you think governments will scale, or do you think it's going to be fully privatized in the next couple of decades, sovereign state style?
Sovereign states would be a lot of fun. That would be interesting. And obviously, there's a lot of countries out there, and we're going to see probably a bifurcation of those countries that are forward thinking and that are, it could create a dark age for certain companies. We just talked about how the Mexican government is not having AI's top of mind. Clearly, it's top of mind here in California. Clearly, there's, David Sachs, the AI and crypto czar here in the United States, and the government that's talking about these things. But what happens to all the countries that don't adapt? I guess they turn into, hopefully, they're good tourist destinations. So we can go surfing or sit at the beach, go get massages in Thailand. whatever it is, eat some pad thai, right? So like, I think we're still going to appreciate those places. But what if you don't have a great industry, you don't have natural resources, and you haven't adopted this technology for your people? It's going to be poverty. It's going to be the new poverty, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, I'm not scared for Mexico. I think economically, Mexico's on a good track, although they're not super bullish on AI. Maybe on the data center side, like you said, that yeah, they first need to understand that technology. But yeah, Mexico is a totally different landscape. It's yeah, it's like most people live in poverty. Here in Oaxaca, I believe it's like 80%, something like that.
Wow.
Doesn't feel like it though. Like and poverty is not equal to unhappy people that wants to
That's
stab you.
right.
You know, like it's just
I mean, I think
different.
in India, you especially see that. I say that India is one of the most incredible places on earth. And when you see the slums and you see the rural areas, and I say, I think those people are way happier on average. And I know people like hate me for saying this, but if they haven't been to India, how can they know? I really believe that some of the street people in India are happier than some of the billionaires here in Silicon
Oh
Valley.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
and a bunch of billionaires are sort of mentally ill. You know, they don't even enjoy wealth anymore, and they think that more will bring more. I do believe that most billionaires are good people and net good add-ons to society.
Philanthropists. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't believe in corporations. I think corporations are pretty toxic, which is sort of a contrarian point. But yeah,
So
I'm
what
not
do you think about the distributed corporation, or you wouldn't call them corporations, but these now
DAO
blockchain?
style. Yeah, DAO
Yeah,
style. I'm very
we
bullish
haven't
on
talked
that. I
about that
think
for a long
that's
time.
yeah, I think that's the future. But I think crypto and blockchain has such a shitty reputation and so many bad actors that yeah, that I don't think it should be like a DAO first company. But even I, you know, like I want to amass like large amounts of wealth and power, and I don't trust myself with that much cash, you know, like because it sort of corrupts you. And you think you're the shit all of a sudden, you inflate your own ego. So I need people to keep me in check. I am not like the full society, right? Because I don't believe that most societies are qualified to put me in check. But I don't know, folks like you, some kind of board, you know, like that would tell me, yo, Charles, you're over your shit now. Come back to Earth and yeah, do something productive, right, for this planet Earth. So think that disconnecting with that is pretty toxic. And yeah, we've seen that in the next couple of years. Places in the world I think will suffer from this revolution. I do think Europe is not in a good place, you know,
Yeah,
like they're so slow. And yeah, the GDPR and all that bullshit, you know.
I mean, you talk
Canada
about
not super bullish as
UBI,
well.
and look, growing up in Israel, I think socialism did a lot of good for Israel as people came from Europe with nothing and they needed
I'm
to be
very bullish
supported.
on
This is my
Israel, by the
grandparents.
way, because it's
Oh,
startup
wow.
nation, right? Like very
Yeah,
bullish on
at least
that.
that side. I think one thing I want to say that people don't understand is that me, my family, and my friends have been protesting this government for many years, and that it's very easy to conflate a government with a people. And so I
Yeah.
tell the people here that are, you know, have Donald J. Trump neurosis and syndrome, I say, well, imagine now someone from outside the US, imagine that everyone supports Trump and everything that he does. And I say it's the same thing with Israel. People don't support what's happening with Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, I think Zelensky, you've got the same issues happening probably in Ukraine. And let's kind of separate the people. And by the way, most of the tech industry isn't for this government. Most of the tech industry is just like the tech industry here. They're very liberal. They want, live and let live and so on and so forth, right? And so that's what people are protesting against and what I've always felt as well. But what's great is the ingenuity, and even through this war that's been happening, there's a lot of technology that's been created and a lot of good that's been created through all of it, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, it's a
lots
very
of grit.
interesting place.
Lots
Yeah,
of grit. And yet, I think the problem with this world that are the main one, and we're seeing that throughout countries, is just gerontocracies, right? Like Netanyahu, I believe he's the next big four. So he just thinks like a consultant broke, you know, like that's his mindset. He's not like open sourced or Silicon Valley style. EQ not so good, you know. And yes, we need strong leaders, but that's just one part of the stack, you know. When you're a
yeah,
world leader, it's a very complicated job. You need to be full stack. We need the very best humans at that
that's true.
level. And
And we
Elon, for
also need some
example, is really
competition.
good. He's
Yeah,
really smart at business, but doesn't mean he needs to. He knows how to run a country, right? So
that's
hopefully
right.
he'll learn on the fly because Elon's pretty smart, right? But
There you go. It sounds like
yeah,
he's back to business. But my point about Europe, which is unfortunate, I love every single country in Europe. When you go there, don't you feel like it's civilized? Like everything has just
it's
got
very
history to
snobby.
it.
It's very
I
snobby,
mean,
but it's very interesting. Yeah, it's a lot of history. London is great on the startup scene. Lots of great startups in France as well. The startup culture there. Yeah, I definitely go there. Southern France, and Spain to just chill. Ibiza maybe. But yeah, I think they're very backwards business wise. They're
it's not
sitting
a
on their
place to start a
laurels.
business.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not a
they're
place to
just
start a
fine with
business.
what they've built before. And Canada and US, it's colonizers countries, Mexico too. So we still got that to prove, right? I think
It's
we're
amazing how
heading the
that
right
persists
direction.
after hundreds of years. That persists.
Yeah,
Well, it
which
looks
is
like you already
great.
have you've got your next guest. I don't know how
Yeah,
you do
yeah,
this back to back, Charles, but
yeah.
keep it going, man. Keep going
Thanks.
strong.
Thanks. So that was Alon Ben-Shoshan.